our differentiator was this concept of interactivity. I wanted to make sure that I made myself redundant. Okay, I need to figure out how to elevate other people, to make myself less significant. And then I don't know what it was. One day I just thought, okay, maybe I should start taking some of these calls. Like, right, I don't have an email address anymore.
Oh my God, that is so weird.
So it's like that part I found a little weird.
Hey again, and welcome back to NexChapter, recorded right here in the Republic studio, as you can see behind my big fat head here. And think of it as a Republic for founders and entrepreneurs, where we share wisdom, celebrate the journey of another entrepreneur, and have some fun. I'm the host, Raman Sehgal, and I'm also the author of The Floundering Founder, the Toronto chapter lead, co-lead, in fact, for post-exit founders, and an all-round good guy, as you've hopefully established by now. This show is for founders who are scaling their businesses and for founders that have sold and are figuring out what to do next. Every episode we do tends to cover the trajectory of the business that the founder grew, the transaction itself, and the transition they went through, and the reality of exit. Think about it as unfiltered wisdom from post-exit founders. All right, who is my guest today? My guest is the absolutely delightful Robin Kerbel, who I've actually spoke to several times before, because we actually have ended up in a similar industry. And when I moved to Toronto, I got connected to her. She grew a very successful kind of comms agency in the pharmaceutical world. A bit of background about my guest. Robin is an entrepreneur and strategic leader with more than 3 decades of experience building and scaling global healthcare communications businesses. She co-founded 6 Degrees Medical back in 2005, growing it into an internationally recognized consulting company servicing life science clients across North America, Europe, and beyond. And after now 20 years at the helm, Robin led the successful sale of 6 Degree Medical to Reverba Global in 2024, helping guide the integration while serving as Chief Strategy Officer. And then in early 2026, in fact, just a few weeks ago, so we got Robin just after this, she transitioned out of Reverba to explore her next chapter as a post-exit founder. So very on brand for what we do here, focusing on new ventures, community-driven initiatives, and advisory work. She brings a founder's perspective on scaling with purpose, navigating M&A, and redefining identity and impact after exit, which again is very, very similar to what we do on the podcast. So she is really the perfect type of guest for our show. And I think you'll get a lot from today's episode, whether you are scaling a business, especially if you're scaling like a service consulting business. It's her story is actually very similar to mine in lots of respect of the sector, the kind of niche sector, but a huge emphasis on culture, and then giving her the kind of putting the tools in place to kind of effectively made herself redundant for the sales process, which I think is super useful for anyone scaling a business. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please follow, subscribe, leave us a kind comment. Don't be nasty, please. I love you people. And and share it with someone that you think might like the show. Or if you've got a guest recommendation, maybe suggest them. Please enjoy today's show. Hello, Robin. Welcome to NexChapter.
Thanks, Raman. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And you are freshly just exited. So this is going to be a really, really fun conversation. And we came coordinated. Is this like an Ontario winter look that we've got going on?
Yeah, I think so. It's a post-exit look.
It's a bit, I like it. This is how all the Canadians rock in a post-exit look. Well, look, so nice to see you. Obviously, you and I have met a few times and know each other, so that's going to make this conversation really fun for our viewers and listeners. Before we start properly, tell us about the drink that you have brought today, or I think you may have brought multiple drinks, which is cool.
Yes, because I usually have like my coffee, and also a side of water. But my coffee, I love like freshly brewed coffee in the morning. So So we grind the beans and then do the whole, 9 yards. But I also add like collagen to it,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
I add like mushroom tincture to it, and I don't do sugar, so I add honey into
Okay.
it. So it's like a mashup
Oh,
of
ritual.
a few different things.
Does
Exactly.
does it not taste weird when you add all that stuff to it?
You can't taste any of it. I mean,
Oh, really? That's interesting.
yeah, it's like tasteless powders and stuff. So, so that helps, me get through the day. And then I always have like a glass of water with lemon in it. So that's my side.
Very classy, Robin. I like it. I've got some kind of funky black raspberry, naturally essenced, fizzy sparkling water, which
Perfect.
no sugar in it, I think, which is all good. So yeah, makes me feel like I'm having a real drink, which without actually being a real drink. So yeah, well, look, so nice to see you. And you and I both have built businesses actually in very similar fields, actually in terms of communications businesses in a kind of broader healthcare pharma sector. So let's start by giving our audience a bit of the overview of the business that you built and maybe the time period, and maybe just get a sense of like what it did and who the clients were and kind of how the growth happened as well.
Yeah, sure. So the company is 6 Degrees Medical. We started in 2005. I started with a colleague who I had worked with previously, and he and I both were thinking about leaving our previous employment at the same time. And so we decided to come together to set up 6 Degrees, because we really were tired of doing the same old thing. There were so many companies in our industry that were just churning out very cookie cutter types of programs. And we thought we could, kind of shake things up a bit by coming up with a new approach to how our industry really focused on getting messages out. So just to give you a little bit of background context, so the industry that we're in is called medical communications. It's a very niche business. I'm sure you're aware of it, but for those who have never heard of it before, it really focuses on helping healthcare organizations and pharmaceutical companies get their message out to the healthcare professional audience, but also to the overall patient community in a way that resonates with them. Because there's a lot of information that's coming up every day in these industries, and we have to try to make it simple for people to absorb.
When you, again, for our audience, when you say medical communications, obviously I've got an understanding, but would you guys be involved in, say, the advertising of specific products, or would it be on what's on the leaflets in a particular box, or would it go across the whole spectrum?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we were not an ad agency. An ad agency would put together those types of materials. What we did is a lot of the work we did was focused around information that would be disseminated at meetings. So those meetings could be medical conferences anywhere in the world. It could be meetings where the company sponsored for physicians to get together and learn about a particular subject. And then we would also, take the outputs of those meetings and turn that into communication pieces for additional audiences, whether those be expanded groups of healthcare professionals or internal company representatives. So really a lot of it was about education and training, and that within the overall umbrella of communication.
Okay. And your clients were typically pharmaceutical companies, presumably, who were wanting you to communicate to a range of stakeholders about a particular new product or an existing product that's already on the market.
Yeah, mostly the work that we would do is around the disease state. Within the disease state, then there'd be an array of pharmaceutical products that'd be available to treat a particular disease, and then we would help educate about what would the differences between those various products.
Interesting. So you would work for, like, say, the rare disease team of Sanofi or Pfizer or whatever, and then you would be educating around that disease area.
Exactly.
But obviously, bearing in mind, okay, cool. And again, for most of our viewers listening, wow, I can't believe this exists. Obviously, like, this is the world I come from as well. And obviously you did this, if I'm understanding correctly, you were doing this stuff as a day job effectively before you started the company. Was there any reticence in terms of going into it, knowing that you were doing patient comms and knowing you were doing healthcare comms, which is like a pretty regulated and like, it's funny because patients and doctors and hospitals in, building remarketing, we have steered well clear of all of that stuff. We stuck to the B2B, boring trade, industrial, unsexy stuff, whereas you obviously went down the route of doing the kind of like the patient comps. And was there any, obviously you've done it for a while, but did you ever think about the risks or regulations and all that, and did that ever stop you from thinking about growing the business, or was it just business as usual?
Yeah, good question. You know what, I never even thought about it from that perspective because I've been doing it for so long. Yeah. Prior to getting into medical communications, I was in healthcare public relations. So I already knew about the regulatory environment. And I mean, we, as a PR agency, we were doing things like helping pharma companies create awareness about diseases and with a focus on the general public. The only difference between that and what we ended up evolving into was that we were focusing on healthcare professionals and patients in particular that were affected by the diseases that we were, educating about.
Were your clients predominantly Canada-based or US-based or like global?
It was, our first client was a global pharma company. And over the years that we were in business, I would say that the bulk of our clients were global, with, of course, subset based here in Canada and some just based in the US, but we also worked with clients in Asia as well. And so really a global agency, even though we were based in Canada, which was quite a differentiator at the time because we were pretty much no other agencies doing what we were doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like, again, like I know the agency space pretty well. And like you were in the time period you started 6 Degrees and grew it, like big healthcare agencies really grew and there was a lot of roll-ups and big agencies started existing. How did you think about differentiation? Like why would a global pharma company use you guys as opposed to like a one-stop shop? Obviously you've got someone like Click Health who are based here in Toronto, absolutely huge company and very well regarded, like, and I don't know if you'd compete directly for them or would they even use you in subcontract potentially? Was that ever a thing you did?
Actually, we subcontracted them on some programs,
which
is interesting. And it was funny because we used to be in the same building as them. And we didn't even know what they did at the time. And then there was an opportunity for a pitch and we brought them into a pitch. And we ended up winning that pitch and they worked with us. So they subcontracted to us, which was quite interesting. They were much smaller at the time. Of course, they're now quite large. But, to answer your question about why pharma company would hire us, I think it was because of our reputation. So the individuals that became part of 6 Degrees had other careers prior to joining and had established strong relationships with a number of people within the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason why we named it 6 Degrees is because the industry is so small and you tend to know people. Right. So, we started it before LinkedIn was the thing. And at that time, this idea of 6 degrees of separation was really quite prevalent in pharma industry. You know somebody who knows somebody and they would introduce you and they would bring you in to help them with a project. And then it just grew from there. Yeah. So we never started off to, say we wanted to be only global. We started off because clients who had worked with us or knew us from previous lives wanted to work with us as individuals.
It's a great point. And again, like we see this on the podcast quite a lot. The pharmaceutical sector is one of the best examples of the importance of reputation, the importance of relationships and how that drives referrals. And it remains even today, even in this crazy digital world we live in, it remains an industry that it's anchored in in-person events as well, like the importance of conferences and in summits and this type of things is phenomenal. And I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon, just because of the nature of of what we're talking about. So yeah,
Mhm.
you know, if my math is correct, there's probably a 20-year journey between, you know, when you started the company and when you left the company. Was like, give us a sense of like, did you grow it to a particular size? And also you obviously mentioned reputation there as well. Were there specific decisions or pivots or anything that you made during that period that really were like a catalyst for growth, right? If you reflect back on like, well, what made 6 Degrees so successful and grow so consistently? Because 20 years is a long time, right? A lot of businesses will go out of business in that time, let alone have the success you had. So yeah, and I'm just trying to, I suppose, unlock for some of our listeners and viewers that are growing a business, like what was it that, you know, the key decisions that you guys made that really, I suppose, enabled that growth to happen?
So I would say for the first 10 years, we were, you know, trying to just keep up.
Yeah.
So, you know, we started with like, there were 2 of us in a boardroom, and then we'd, you know, get a project and we'd hire a person, and then, you know, get another project, hire a person. And we used a lot of contractors as well to help us with the gaps. But it was really no different than any other startup in that first time frame. We just, you know, focused on how could we do things differently. And that for us, because we were really focused on the meeting industry at the time, our differentiator was this concept of interactivity. How do we create more engaging events, and not the traditional event at the time, which was a doctor standing at the front of a large room, putting all of his doctor colleagues to sleep while he got up on this podium and talked about a study that most doctors had no idea about. And some, you know, in many cases were not, you know, there for the learning. They were there, you know, for the networking or for other purposes. So interactivity was what we decided we wanted to hang our hat on. And so when we decided that, we partnered with other companies that could help bring this concept to life. And I think that was a huge differentiator at the time, because there weren't a lot of companies in our space that were doing this. So I think these partnerships allowed us to, you know, come to the forefront, as well as to demonstrate to the industry that there was a way of doing things differently than what they had done.
Who were you partnering with? Were you partnering with the event organizers, or were you organizing the events, just so I understand?
So we would be charged with being the driving agency, and then we would bring in complementary partners, whether that be, you know, an AV company that did things differently.
Okay.
You know, could be, you know, like we did holograms at the time as well, where we would have like images of, you know, the original inventors up on the stage, you know, and being able to take questions from the audience. Like that was, you know, very interesting and had never been done before. Then the use of iPads became popular. So this was way before bring your own device. So iPads started to become popular at meetings, and then we could do interactive activities and games. And then we took this idea and did gamification of our meetings, right? So, you know, it evolved over time. We set up our meetings, sometimes like trade shows where people could walk around to various booths and learn information. The, you know, the concept of interactivity really just blossomed over this time because technology improved as well. Yeah. And that was really what set us apart. And clients would come to us because they had heard of this.
Oh, that's so interesting. You almost like spent the first 10 years building your, I'd say like a traditional a med comms agency, but then started to get known for like experiential, like being the guys to go to for like, hey, we won an amazing event. And did that, I'm guessing that just drove more clients and more interest and more exposure, because you're obviously meeting people at all these events as well. So like everyone's like, who the heck's doing this? These guys are amazing.
Exactly. And yeah, people, you know, started to ask for us because they knew that the events were going to be way more interesting. And I think the other differentiator was that there were a lot of companies in our space that were organizing, you know, events, but not so many were actually providing the scientific rigor so that the client's messaging was going to be also, you know, at a higher level. So we decided, okay, we wanted to build an internal scientific communication team. And so we hired people with, kind of science backgrounds, PhDs, masters, and they developed a rigor around the scientific writing. And so, but it wasn't just like putting together a slide presentation. It was about how do we tell the story with this information so that the educational message would be received in a way that would be retained and applied. Because ultimately, we wanted doctors to walk away and say, I learned something, but I also now know how to apply this in my practice. So it was really the experiential plus the science made this come to life.
And were you tempted? I mean, it reminds me of when we scaled remarketing. There was, I mean, we never did events. Actually, it was one area we didn't do because it just always seemed so much work to do events. Like, I admire what you guys achieve because things can just go wrong and people only ever remember events often when things just go terribly. And you're always relying on third parties and partnerships, and that always scared me. And so it was an area that we said no to very intentionally. And the reason I mentioned that is like, were you tempted? Obviously, you're in a very clear niche, which is great, but you were adding these different service lines. You were adding this. Did you ever extend at any point and like introduce something like, oh God, we shouldn't have done that? Or were you pretty, I suppose, did you stick to your guns on doing these experiential events and with the scientific element and obviously the kind of comms as well? Was there a temptation to do other stuff?
For sure, there was a temptation to try different things. And we tried things over the years that we decided that was not our sweet spot. Luckily, we didn't invest too much time or energy in those things. Most of them happened because our clients would say, oh, we saw you do this. Can you help us with this other thing? Right? Yeah. And so, figure out how to do that. But some things, either they, weren't fun for us or they weren't going to generate revenue because we were learning things and there was no margin. Okay. Because we had spent so much time doing it. So those things we quickly were able to identify. These are not areas where we want to focus. And we really had a very strong financial kind of backbone to the business, which helped us make those decisions quickly. So, if I look back, one of the, I think, most important things is financial rigor when you start up a company.
Where did that come from? Was that you or was that your partner or like what was it?
Definitely me, because like I came from working with my mother for, 15 years in my career. And she, from day one, basically said, Robin, can you please help me with the back end operations of my company? She was in PR.
Okay, in PR. Okay, wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right. So she was one of the first healthcare PR agencies in Canada. And so I started working with her and I basically ran the whole back end of that business. And then when I started 6 Degrees, I just continued with that role. So it was something that I was quite
What a gift. What a gift from your mum. I'm sure at the time when you were working there, you were probably thinking, I don't want to work for my mum's business, but you actually, you picked up this skill. Okay. So grew a successful business. And then obviously, at some point, we'll get into the sale and the transaction itself. Before we do that, knowing this industry pretty well, you must have had big agency groups knocking on your door particularly in the last, I'd say, my guess would be from 2015 to 2021, 2022, must like the kind of golden years in the industry in a sense where the industry actually expanded. Medcoms agencies, global healthcare agencies did really, really well. Just talk us through, like, was there any temptation, assuming that was the case, or even private equity companies interested in your business, did that happen with people knocking on your door, Robin? And then I suppose what was I call it like the stars aligning moment. Was there a moment where like, and I kind of have a bit of an inkling because I knew this other stuff that you had in the background, but it just, what made it feel like the right time? Was it the approach that you had? Was it something in your personal life? Was it in the business where it was at? Like, what happened to kind of, maybe take one of those calls seriously?
Yeah, I would say, it was probably towards the latter part of like 2019, early 2020, before COVID, we started getting calls and emails from various players in the industry. And I wasn't ready at the time. We were in the midst of professionalizing organization and establishing, more defined processes, for example, and just elevating everything that we did in order to scale.
Yeah.
Because, in order to scale, you need to have a really strong backbone. And so I didn't feel I could maximize the opportunity at that point in time. Then COVID came, and that, killed us in terms of just having to reinvent ourselves quickly overnight, which we did because we were already working a lot of time remotely. So we were able to quickly, the next day, have everyone work from home, no problem. And we were already on Teams. So we were, a little bit ahead of the game because people were just starting to get into doing virtual types of work. And so COVID then was challenging because, we had to reinvent the business overnight. And I would say starting again then in 2021, those calls became more frequent. And, ultimately I just kept thinking, why am I getting so many calls? Maybe the stars are aligning or something. And ultimately I decided, in 2022, late 2022, 2023, to start to consider it.
Great timing.
That's when I started considering it.
I know that is the very good timing given what was going on in the industry. So I wanted to come back to what you said before earlier about this. I think it's a really key point in that investing in processes and professionalizing the business, because I think that's a really smart thing to do in the run up to doing something like a transaction, because if you have to do it mid transaction, it's a nightmare. How did you, and again, one of the biggest challenges I think agency businesses have is their reliance on the founder or the founding team. So how did you think, or how did you navigate the elevation of people and adding different levels of expertise? Because my mind would be, well, we're buying Robin's business, but Robin does everything. Did you have to, was there a very intentional, proactive way to evolve that, and maybe you hired senior people, for example?
So yes, the answer is not as simple as yes, but yes, we did all that. But it was probably around 2015 that we started to, I guess, professionalize our leadership team. Mm-hmm. And we hired a business coach to help us with that. We also came up with a org structure because we didn't have one before that. So we were a very flat organization. Yeah. And everyone basically did everything. And then we decided at a certain point that was not feasible anymore. So we hired this business coach. We came up with a strategy. We had more rigor in terms of the business operations. And then we established a leadership team.
Okay, that's good.
And that leadership team was comprised of complementary skill sets. So I wanted to make sure that I made myself redundant in time.
So so back in 2015, was that were you very proactive about this?
Yeah.
If I ever want to exit this business, I'm going to have to make myself redundant. Because people don't always do that, right? And it's often too late. So I just want to underline that that's such a key point for anyone listening or watching who wants to exit at some point. Then assuming you don't want to go and be the key person going forward, which does happen as well. We've had that where people want to exit for a different reason, but for you wanted to make yourself redundant.
I definitely wanted to be less involved in the day-to-day business, because I found that the more that I was traveling, because we were in the event business, it was a lot of on-site work. The more I was traveling, the less I was able to grow the business, and so the more I spent time on airplanes, and in foreign countries, the less successful we were going to be. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I need to figure out how to elevate other people, to make myself less significant, to make sure the clients know that we have a full team of people who are here to support them. That was even before I thought about ever selling the business. It was just because I wanted to help scale the business. And you can't scale a business if you don't have things in place.
Yeah. So if it's just relying on one person, right? It's difficult. We see that
absolutely impossible.
Again. Yeah, we see that. It was there's an interview that we did recently, and the guy talked about his catalyst for growth was when he basically he was a software engineer, and he was the minute I took myself away from software engineering. The business actually, they went from like 50 people to 250 people. Like it was phenomenal, the growth. So yeah. Okay. So 2022, 23 comes around in. Was this like an inbound opportunity, Robin, that came to your door, an agency that you knew, an existing relationship, or did you actually hire a banker? Like what was the process?
So none of the above. I was basically just starting to get all these emails. Like no idea how they found me. I guess that's what, these companies do. They look for agencies. I think one of the reasons why we were so interesting for many of these organizations is because we were based in Canada and the UK, and a lot of the companies from the US were interested in getting presence outside of the US.
I didn't realize you had a UK presence. Actually, that's interesting. What that is, I could see why a US company would be really interested in that.
So, and then the UK companies were interested because they could have some additional scale in the UK, but also have a foothold into North America without having to go to US. Right. So we were able to bridge that gap. So
interesting.
So we started getting these calls, and I kept ignoring them. And then I don't know what it was. One day I just thought, okay, maybe I should start taking some of these calls. Like, just, thought, well, I'm not getting any younger. I don't want to be in the business forever. And maybe, this is a sign from who knows where. But maybe this is a sign. There's got to be a reason why all of a sudden everyone's contacting us. So then I started to take some calls and, just wanted to hear what they had to say. And, I was very skeptical that anyone would want to buy us. I just really didn't.
Why were you skeptical? Like, what was that like a insecurity thing? Was it a scale thing? Like, because obviously, like, I'm looking at it being like very niche agency in a good sector, probably blue chip clients, it's probably sticky business, regular revenue, geographic presence. Like,
yeah. I just thought, I'm from Canada and we're very low key here, and like, why would anyone want to buy a Canadian company? Right? It's like.
It's the most Canadian thing I've ever heard, by the way.
We're very humble, right? And it's like, so I mean that was really why I thought, okay, this can't possibly be interesting. Maybe once I tell them stuff, they're going to walk away. So, but it didn't happen. People kept knocking the door, and finally, I just said, okay, maybe I should get a little bit more information on how this whole process would work. So there was a woman who I contacted, who introduced me to a few of her banker contacts, so I can understand like what the whole process would be like. And then after that, I hired a banker, and I thought, okay, what can you do to help us prepare for a sale in the coming? I didn't even know what the time frame was. I thought, maybe this is going to take 5 years. I had no clue how long it would take. But I think once I made that decision to hire a banker, then they were amazing in terms of helping us put all the pieces in place.
And was this banker someone that knew the medcoms agency space or anything like that? Or because I know bankers actually that do that specific, that specific stuff. So it was just whether or not that was a consideration, or was it just someone locally you'd been recommended, or someone that you knew?
So it was a recommendation from somebody in the UK who recommended I work with this banker in the US. The banker in the US had healthcare experience, not a specialist in medcom, but they understood the healthcare space. And I interviewed 3 different organizations, all whom were in the US.
Okay, interesting.
Because I spoke to a couple of Canadian companies, and they felt that they couldn't serve us properly because we wanted to sell to either US or UK company.
So, okay, so you hired a banker, and then, this banker is presumably reaching out to private equity or strategic like trade companies. What made you mentioned the geography before. What else made the company so attractive? So like in private equity speak, they talk about value drivers, right? Like my assumption would be you had blue chip clients, and, you're obviously a good team, management team, et cetera, was what was so attractive about the business that led to like presumably multiple people and multiple companies looking at you guys?
So definitely the blue chip clients, the global nature of the client base, the fact that we had a really strong scientific team. So we had 25 in-house medical writers, which was a big advantage because really hard to find and train those types of folks. We had a really solid kind of strategic team as well. We had people who had been with us for a long time, so many years of experience in the company, so that they knew they weren't just buying me, but they were buying a team.
Yeah.
Prior to going to market, we also went through 2 years of a process called EOS.
Yeah, well, it's funny, I literally was going to ask you because that's exactly what we did as well. So I'm interested, like did you use an operating system? So yeah, okay, that's interesting.
So we used EOS. We hired a facilitator who helped us, really narrow down what were the core processes in the organization. How do we operationalize everything? How do we take what, we were doing and kind of inject a bit of automation into that? We started to really elevate everything that we were doing. And that is what I think made it attractive to prospects.
Yeah, so similar. Honestly, I'm kind of like nodding away because it's very, very similar to what happened at remarketing. And then so when it came down to my guess would be you had multiple offers on the table, and how did you think about that then in terms of like what was the most important aspect? Like obviously the number and how much was being offered is one, but like, presumably all of these offers wanted Robin to stick around for a while, and I'm sure you would happily have just walked away on day one. I don't know, but I'm just, again, for people who are going to go through this process, like how did you think about whether it was the number or the structure or the kind of the whole kind of package, if you like, that led you to make a decision on a or was it culture fit? I'm sure there's lots of reasons.
Yeah, there were many reasons. I would say the number one thing that I was looking for was culture fit. I did not want to be absorbed into a large organization and have everything that we had done disappear. And which is often the case that happens if you go for
definitely
one of these big multinationals. So we decided not to go down that path. Then there were a couple that I was interested in speaking with, but at the end of the day, I just thought, that's not really the path that I think makes the most sense for us. I also wanted my team to stay intact. So I really wanted to find somebody who did not have overlap in terms of the types of individuals that worked for us versus who worked for them. Ultimately, the right fit for me was a combination of a commitment to excellence because we had established such a strong reputation, and a commitment to making sure we were partners with our clients and not a supplier.
Vendor, supply,
right. So after many meetings and discussions and like presentations, and I settled on one company, which I thought, okay, we'll go through the process with them and see how it goes. And ultimately, that's who we ended up, going with.
What's the name of the company that bought you guys?
It's Reverba Global.
Reverba, yeah.
It's based out of Seattle, and they're in the patient engagement business, and we were in the medical, communications, dealing mostly with healthcare professionals and patient organizations. And so I thought, what a amazing
nice
complementary,
right,
coming together between those two types of service areas, and so that really made a difference for me.
And final question on the transaction side of things before we move to kind of what life's looked like since, because I know you've exited since very recently, in fact. But did your team know about this? Like as you were going, like how involved? It was something I was very nervy about, and like I didn't tell anyone because I was worried. So I think in founder-led businesses, it's you either have everyone's aligned on the same mission. We're going to sell this business. We never had that. Like I did
not tell anybody.
Yeah, me you have this dark secret, hanging this cloud of like, oh my God, I feel so guilty. Like these people, they're going to think I'm a sellout, all that kind of stuff. But so, okay, that's interesting that but presumably at some point you had to tell them, right?
Yeah, at some point. But I mean, the only person that I told initially was my finance person.
Okay.
Because I needed him to help me.
yeah, especially in the diligence process.
Right, the diligence process is a very stressful experience, and you definitely have to have a strong financial backing. Somebody who will help support that, because there's no way as a founder I was going to be able to pull all the reports that were required.
Yeah, especially when you're still doing things day to day. I presume by this point you weren't necessarily on every client project or account or whatever.
Absolutely not. No, I had extricated myself off of most of them. Yeah.
Okay, so congratulations on this, and like obviously building a successful business over you were classically like 20-year overnight success type everything. Where literally is 20 years for you, which is incredible, and certainly some of the things that I think are really interesting around like the quality of the team, blue chip clients, how location and geography, we hear that quite a lot on the podcast, like where you're. But actually this overlap of expertise and specific expertise, I think is really interesting as well, that it was complementary with the buyer. So it's no surprise that they felt that you were a good fit. So let's go into the transition then. So obviously do you have an earn-out that you had to stick around for a certain amount of time and be involved?
No, there was no requirement for me to stick around. I wanted to stick around to see it through and make sure that the transition was as...
And how long was that for?
How
long was it?
It was just under 2 years.
Okay. So that was like you though, right? That wasn't them saying you have to do this. This was like on you to...
No.
I mean, that's amazing. Good on you, because I'm sure a lot of people will like, see you later and walk away. So like that, you are, I suppose, a person of your... I mean, obviously we know each other a little bit, like strike me as a person of your word and honor and like, all that kind of stuff, because actually like, you could have easily just, and I know you're going to go and talk about what you're doing now in your new business, but like you could have easily just walked away and so just staying there to make sure that there was that continuity. But you left very recently in terms of like you've like shut the door, walked away, whatever the phrase is. And I want you to talk about like what you're doing now. But how does that feel now you're like not there at all? Because like that. So remarketing the first business I found, like I'm still on the board, I'm still involved in the business, and that, I came to candidates, set up the office and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not at that point where like I'm not involved all day. Like I'm not involved day to day, but like to not be involved at all is like the next thing that might happen down the line. How does it feel? Is it weird? Is it kind of like, have you been able to like process it and transition in that in your kind of last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite recent, as you know, right? So it's just been like 10 days. But I was already mentally, preparing for this, because I just thought, okay, and anything that I needed to contribute I had already done. And so over the last few months, I just knew that the time was right for me to leave. And, I still like check my email thinking I'm going to get an email, about the business. And then it's like, no, it's not there. Right. I don't have an email address anymore.
Oh my God, that is so weird.
So it's like that part I found a little weird, but over the last couple of weeks, I've just started to calm down. It's like, oh, this is actually nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's the habit, isn't it? It's the habit of like, I mean, I my like remarketing email is my, like, if I send you an email today, that's the default email that goes to. So like thinking that to disappear is a bizarre thing. And okay, tell us what you're doing. And what I find really interesting about you, Robin, is you've had this couple of years where you're not doing nothing, right? You're not sitting there doing nothing, because in that time period, you've obviously had a side project that you've been working on and building, which I presume it almost gives you something to go to as opposed to nothing. And I think that's one of the mistakes. The mistake is not the right word. One of the things that can catch people out is they think, hey, I'm going to have a pot of money and my problems are all going to disappear. But actually not having anything to go to is actually a bit of and this is very intentional. I'm going traveling, I'm taking some time off and being with my kids or whatever. But you've obviously built something else on the side, which is so different to what you've done in the past. Talk to us about that. Give our kind of listeners and viewers a bit of an insight into what you're building now.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to clarify, I wasn't actually involved in this other business myself, but my husband.
Your husband. Yeah.
Started this kind of business, I guess, in the last, 18 months to 2 years. And so I'll give you a little bit of background. So during COVID, we moved outside of Toronto. We moved to a small town 2 hours north. And because over the last few years, we've all been remote, so it hasn't made a huge difference. I was working from home. So while, we made this transition, my husband decided, to look for opportunities that were closer to home. And as a developer, he, found this great property just right near us that had a beautiful old barn on it. Bought this property and decided to turn it into a multi-use facility. So it will be, when it's finished, will be a market, so a weekly farmers type of market, but an elevated kind of type of market. It'll be a wedding venue. It will be a music venue. It'll be an art venue. It'll be a place for chefs to come together for culinary experiences. It'll be a place for yoga retreats, for, all kinds of health-oriented activities. So it really is a multi-use type of facility that we're now going to bring to market together now that I'm no longer working. And it's under construction at the moment. And then we will open in June with a weekly farmers market as a starting point.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to have to come because it's not far from me. So to come up and it sounds amazing. And and what's the plan? Are you going to kind of muscle in on your husband's business? Kind of like,
well, I think he would like me to muscle in on the business.
Well, all this events experience you've got is probably going to come in very, very handy now.
Exactly. So the event side of this is a natural area for me to, be involved in because, I have so many years of experience in events. Doesn't matter what sector it's in. You just still need the same type of mindset for it. So he's very happy for me to, kind of drive that side of it. There's other parts that he's really interested in, like the music side of the business. And we also, we'll start building a team as well. He has some people that he's been working with over the last couple of years who are fantastic. But as we, grow, we'll obviously have to continue to hire.
That's cool. Yeah. It's transitioning to a husband and wife kind of cool events business out in the countryside. It's like what it sounds like what dreams are made of. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of hard work. I mean, developing a property and then creating this, and it's kind of like if we build it, they will come type project.
I mean, that's the hope, right?
It's the leap of faith piece as well, which is amazing. So, and the only final thing I was going to ask, and this might be a really personal question, so do you have to? But you mentioned right earlier on, obviously, your mum had a successful business, and I don't know if your mum's still around or anything like that, but she must be so proud, right? Is where I was going to go with that, and you can kind of understand the setting. I've lost my father in life, I don't know if you, but she must be very proud of what you've achieved, not only to, I suppose, create something, nurture it and build it over 20 years, but then be able to sell it and transition out and do something that would be my assumption based on what she did in her career.
She's definitely proud of what, I was able to accomplish. And, she, taught me a lot of what I needed to learn in my early days to be able to do what I did. Right. And so I think she takes some satisfaction in knowing that as well. But she's been a big fan and a follower of mine since we started the business. And, I think she's still, very interested in knowing what's going on. She's still really quite engaged, in terms of asking about the industry. And she was in pharma as well. So really understands this business. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I can't remember if you have kids or not. Excuse me for
I have two kids. Yeah. Two
yeah.
kids.
And so, how, and I often ask guests, this is kind of a topic that comes up with my wife and I quite a lot, about thinking about wealth generation and how you manage that with kids and stuff like that. And I suspect with your kids, they've probably had a lot of time to get used to, you had a successful business for a long time, but selling the business and obviously presumably getting a significant liquidity event, has that changed anything in terms of the kids and how they think about money and how you as a family think about money and all that kind of stuff?
Luckily not. So my kids are, older and, pretty well established in terms of where they see their place in the world. I think that one thing I can say is that there's less pressure from a financial perspective, but I never wanted this to change their approach to, living their lives. And they're both well on their way to figuring out how they want to do that. So, yeah. So
that's cool. I think it's definitely more of a, and then he said issues, more of a consideration when you've got when the kids are really young, right? Like, as in like, we interviewed a guy recently and like has 3 young kids, and you had a very significant exit in how people view the family and how they view them as impacting the kids and stuff like that. And it's really interesting for you, we've got older kids that are kind of like, well, yeah, we're doing our own thing, and like,
for
whatever.
them it's made no difference. Yeah,
it's no difference. Yeah, which is cool. Well, look, Robin, it's amazing what you've achieved, and I am very grateful for your time to come on the podcast and have matching colors with me as well today, which is cool. And and obviously, depending on when we put this podcast out, and if the time is right, to put the links to your new venue and things like that, and we'll happily do that. And anyone
Perfect.
that's in and around or coming to Toronto or heading to this part of the world, like, certainly encourage people to check it out. I'm going to definitely come, by the way. I'm
come by this summer for sure.
Yeah. I'm excited. We always we haven't quite got to the Canadian Toronto, having a cottage in the north type thing level yet, but we tend to travel around in and around the city during the summer, so we'll definitely do that. But congratulations and thanks so much for being a guest.